Well, until you go live, I'll take a picture.
No, we're live here.
Okay.
We are live. So, Nava Swersky Sofer, you've got Mel. Welcome to our show.
Thanks, Mel. I'm very lucky to have Mel.
And we're lucky to have you. And you are number 20 on the show.
Which is fantastic because I think we first met about 20 years ago.
It's entirely possible. We were wearing different hats at the time.
True.
We'll talk about that. So we start the show with the jingle. Are you ready for the jingle?
Absolutely.
The jingle, there has to be a jingle. Can't start a show without a jingle. Here it comes.
Get a chair, grab a seat, oh, sweep you off your feet. We move, we groove, you got Mel. Ease your legs, rest a while, all you gotta do is smile. We're swell, can't you tell, you got Mel. Oh, when the show begins, you better hold on it tight, or before you know it, you'll be high as a kite. Take a breath, settle down, we're the only show in town. It's our road, don't you know, you got Mel. Give it up, don't think twice, we're a hurricane all night. What the hell, give it yell, ring your bell, show and tell. Mademoiselle, give it smell, you got Mel. You got Mel.
And Mel today has Nava. So Nava, you're an enigma. You have two last names. How did that happen?
Well, in the usual way, I was born Swersky. I married Mr. Sofer. We subsequently divorced, but it's my children's last name, so I kept it. It's much easier to travel the world with children who carry the same last name as you do. So I kept the name. It's maybe one day we won't have to do that, but as we stand today in this country, it's still easier to carry the same last name as you do.
Okay, and Swersky, who are your parents?
My parents are South African. They came on Aliyah to Israel, and
what year?
They came in '65, so it's a long time ago. So it's 55 years this month, actually. And I was born 2 months later. So I am the very first Sabra in the entire extended family. That's also why I grew up speaking English. I didn't actually learn Hebrew until I went to kindergarten because no one around me spoke Hebrew. They were still learning. And my grandparents, who came shortly thereafter, also were learning. So that's how I came to be actually totally bilingual.
And I don't know anything about your parents, but you have a kind of a dual citizenship.
Right.
On the one hand, no, not the kind that you're thinking. On the one hand, you're a tough-nosed business person. That's how I met you. But on the other hand, you are a very gentle woman who loves poetry and the arts.
I do, and to me, they're not mutually exclusive. I think that we need both. There's the famous Chinese proverb about if you got two pennies, you use one to buy bread and the other to buy a flower. The bread so you have something to live on, and the flower so you have something to live for. There's also the famous Churchill saying, World War II again, that we fight in order to live and enjoy the arts. And it's always been a very big part of my life. As a child, my father ran a large dance organization, so I kind of grew up backstage and had the pleasure of meeting many exciting people.
Which dance?
What's actually an interesting story, my dad is a lawyer by profession, so am I. I come from a long line of reformed lawyers, and he re-qualified when we came to Israel. He already had his own firm in South Africa, but when they came here, he re-qualified, and one of his clients at some point was the Baroness Bathsheba de Rothschild. And she at the time had the Batsheva Dance Company, also the Batsheva Arts and Crafts, and recruited him to run the organization. So he ran the Batsheva Batdor Dance organization. Later on, it was Batdor in the school.
And you were a cute little blonde imp running around on the stage.
Well, I have to say, I love dance. I did dance for many years. I'm not terribly talented at it, but it was great fun. So that was certainly part of it. But my dad was very active internationally. He was on the board of UNESCO's art organization. He traveled the world and went places people didn't go at the time, Eastern Europe and Russia and so on and so forth. He was involved in bringing Valery Panov, who at the time was the big star of Russian dance, to Israel. And he actually came from the airport to our house. I remember being woken up to meet him. My dad said, this is history, you'll remember this, and I do.
Did you do a suitable pirouette in Pas de Chat when he arrived?
I think I probably yawned. I was fast asleep. But there was a lot of that sort of performing arts and everything around that, music and theatre and so on. And also just, the arts I think very important.
Yes, and your mummy?
My mom is an amazing woman. My mom has a PhD in legal history, which she did much later on in life because she actually fled South Africa. She was politically active on what was then the wrong side of the fence. And she had started her PhD, but ended up fleeing and coming to Israel. That's a story we don't have to discuss today. And she then did a master's degree in Chinese political philosophy. She also studied Chinese cooking at the time. So we were one of the very few families in Israel in the 70s and 80s. We'd all go out, 4 children, which was a little unusual at the time, and sit in a Chinese restaurant all eating with chopsticks, causing quite a stir. And then later on...
Nava, that's very good. You were eating with chopsticks and causing quite a stir. I like that. I'm going to use it in a children's book.
Be my guest.
So you're the eldest of 4 children, just like me.
I am. I have 3 brothers.
And that is why you're such a driven person?
I don't know. I really don't know. There's all this research that says that eldest children tend to be driven. I think I'm just lucky. I am lucky to have received a lot of different influences at home. My mom, who, apart from everything I've said, is also a gemologist, and she set up and was the first director of the Israel Diamond Museum, and a whole lot of other things. My dad, with varied interests, because he then went on to the energy business and has always done a lot of things all over the world. So there was a breadth of experiences that I'm very grateful for, and the understanding that one could do a lot of different things, and that where you start is not necessarily where you end up.
Wonderful. So you ended up studying law of all things.
I was 16. I had graduated from high school. Much to my surprise, the army didn't want me yet. They told me to go away and come back when I was 17. I did try. And there were 2 things I looked at the time as options. One was going to London to study film at the BBC Film School. And the other was studying law here in Israel, which is what I ended up doing, partly because I didn't want to leave the country for a year at the time. At that time, I had a boyfriend in the army, and wonderful reasons. And secondly,
so where did you study?
I studied at Tel Aviv University. It did require changing the rules to let me register, not necessarily be admitted, but Israel's changed. But at the time, if you hadn't done military service or were within a particular program to postpone your military service, you couldn't register, you couldn't submit the forms. So
you were 16.
I was 16, but they didn't care. It wasn't something that they had ever come across. So we,
But you got in, and I'm guessing that you were a top student, right?
I was fine,
I'm guessing.
And while I was there, I ended up joining the academic reserves program so that I could finish studying. And
eventually, you became a venture capitalist,
I did.
an investor. When I met you, you were a hard-nosed lady who gave entrepreneurs like me a hard time.
Well, I hope it wasn't too hard of a time.
No. I mean, no. I would have remembered. And now but you also like to be in academia. This I remember.
That's true. That's true, and that came a little bit later. I was a lawyer in the military. I'm a retired captain of the Israel Defense Forces, and I was the chief defense counsel for the Air Force and the Navy, and then the assistant chief prosecutor. And I went to do my MBA in Europe, which is where I wanted to be. I didn't want to go to America. I did end up there later on, but a different story. And from there, I found myself in the pharmaceutical industry. I was vice president, the headquarters of what is now Novartis. And that's where I was introduced to venture capital initially, and moved to California after 5 years in Switzerland, became a partner in one of the very large healthcare venture funds. And after a decade abroad, I moved back to Israel, and that's when we met. I had my own small fund here that I started in partnership with Shamrock. They were at the time the largest foreign investor in Israel. And I was looking to do what I'd done in California, which was early stage, hands-on healthcare investing. And really, having been in very big business, moving to the small startups was a phenomenal experience, because you suddenly have so much to give and you can make a real difference. You really can make a real difference. So that's sort of how that happened. It wasn't planned, but one thing led to another, and the opportunities presented themselves.
So how many startups did you invest in?
Oh gosh, dozens.
Dozens?
Dozens.
Did any succeed?
They did actually. Quite a number of them succeeded. One that I'm very proud of is a company that I was involved with in California, and I was the active chairperson, so I actually ran the business. The CEO was the scientist who had started it. And it's particularly near and dear to my heart because we developed a drug for Parkinson's disease, which got to the market. And it was not long after my grandfather died, he had Parkinson's disease. My uncle has Parkinson's disease.
Did we ever talk about this?
I don't think we did.
You know, everybody in my family has Parkinson's disease.
We should continue this conversation because sadly, Parkinson's disease came back into my life over the last year. Someone very close to my heart. So I have rekindled my contacts and activities in this field, and find myself, going back to what we did at the time. But having the experience as an early stage venture capitalist of getting a drug to market was amazing. It's an amazing experience.
What happened to the drug?
The drug is still on the market in some countries. It's a D2 agonist for the treatment of Parkinson's disease that was initially designed to be given in a patch formulation. So the idea was that you shouldn't have this on-off time that Parkinson's patients have. And it was exciting on the business side because I did deals in Japan and in Europe and in North America and traveled all over and really got this thing going. But it was mostly exciting on the personal human side because we really managed to make a difference to people. And I think it's one of the things that keeps people in this business of healthcare is you stumble across it if you're not a healthcare professional, which I wasn't. and you can't really leave because it's so meaningful. So I found myself doing a lot of that. Another company that comes to mind is a company I did here in Israel, which was a medical device for the diagnosis and treatment of particular heart conditions. It's near and dear to my heart because it was very successful for the fund, so it was a good financial deal, but also, again, novel technology that makes a difference. So, and then, I mean, there were many others that I've been involved with.
So this is a very personal question, but outside of the great joy of developing drugs that help humanity, did you make tens of millions of dollars along the way?
Not enough. Not enough.
Because the reason I'm asking is because now you're working for a couple of bucks a month at a music college.
I am, that's true.
It's not to make ends meet, right?
Look, it's an amazing experience. I found
Nava, you didn't answer my previous question.
I know.
You're not working for the money, right?
No, I still, I still work. I have a family to keep and children and all of that. But the music is just, it really is food for the soul. And
so what are you doing at Rimon, which is a place that I hold in high regard? I play jazz, as you know. I never managed to study there or to teach there. Maybe you can get me a teaching position. What are you doing? What are you doing at Rimon?
What I'm doing at Rimon now is I head the new program on music technology and innovation. It's a minor, so it's the first time Rimon actually has a minor that is taught in addition to whatever your major is in music. It can be in production or in voice or a particular musical instrument. Rimon, for the international audience, is Israel's leading school of popular music. It's been around for 35 years. And
there's only two, so...
There've been a few smaller ones over the years, but it really is. It's very well known. And
the other one says it's the best one too. It's all right.
I'm not going there. I'm not going there. But it is. It's just a wonderful place with an amazing vibe to it. And an old school friend of mine is the deputy head of Rimon. And some years ago, he called up to consult. He spent 20 years at Berkeley College of Music in.
What's his name?
His name is Izhar Shechter, and he's the Deputy Director General of Rimon, having spent 20 years at Berkeley and also working in the tech field. So we were at school together.
One second, people will misunderstand you. Berkeley School of Music in Boston.
In Boston.
Yeah,
Berkeley
with two E's, not Berkeley West Coast.
Berkeley, Berklee, is the music college in Boston. And he was there 20 years, moved back, and for a long time had wanted to do something with music tech, innovation. He's someone who was involved in this field for a long time. Called me up some years ago, I think it was even before I joined IPC, and said, can I consult with you? And over the years, we talked about it. I met with the management of Rimon. We discussed what was the best thing to do. They started a small programming course, which was just a one-off course. And I would come and help them out near the end of the year, do a sort of demo day. And about a year and a half ago, we started talking more seriously about creating an actual 3-year program. And one thing led to another, and they said, oh, well, we'll need a sort of Entrepreneurship 101 course. What do you think? I said, fine, I'll do it, and found myself in this past academic year having an absolute ball with about 30 students who are musicians. So you really have to teach them a new language. And then a couple of months ago, they said, well, will you head the program? Because next year we'll have a first year and a second year. And so the program is a 3-year program. And they learn all about entrepreneurship, startups, and innovation. Very, very hands-on. They do projects, they do demos, and they also have programming, which is not compulsory. It's an elective, but starting with a programming 101 in the first year, and then advanced programming and even more advanced programming. The third year will be in collaboration with Berklee College of Music. So that's something we're working on now. The second year, which we're only starting in November, has a much broader startup lab course called Startup Lab for Music of the Future, which I will give. They have a course on user interface, user experience and product as someone who's a veteran of the music tech industry. They need everyone who's willing to come and talk to them. And so far, no one said no. And they're all mentors in the program, the CEOs of the successful music tech companies here, some very well-known names. And I think everyone likes the association of music technology innovation. My plan is to take this a step further, to create a music tech hub around Rimon. So not necessarily just for Rimon students, but anyone who's active in the field, who's starting a company, who wants to start a company. If there's one thing that the last 6 months has taught us, and I know we're not talking about the coronavirus, but still, if there's one thing we've learned in the last 6 months is that you're not dependent upon physical space or even a physical interaction to make things happen. And so that makes it much easier for me both to bring people in from abroad to be involved in the program and also to create a hub, which again, if a year ago we were looking at where are we going to take a space and how we're going to plan it, not so relevant anymore. So that's, I think, one of the positives.
But Nava, what is relevant, there's two things that are relevant. The first is, how is Rimon going to teach in the coming semester? Because everybody else is teaching via Zoom. How do you teach a music college via Zoom?
That's a very big challenge, but it's one that they have faced this year. Middle of March, when Israel shut down, along with the rest of the world, within 4 days, 80% of the courses at Rimon went online. Now, luckily, I had just finished teaching because I had my course, I wanted it that way, in the first semester, which had ended in February. But for the others, they taught online. The one thing that was postponed was ensembles, performances. That got postponed to the summer. And unfortunately, we managed to do a few in person, and then the last few were broadcast on Facebook Live, YouTube, and so on, because we couldn't have an audience. But we did manage to do the teaching online, and the infrastructure has now been upgraded so that we can do that. I've had a few meetings with the students over the summer that were hybrid. I did go to the college, but I had a Zoom connection as well. So some people were there, some people were at home or wherever they are. I don't love teaching on Zoom, but it enables us to continue living and doing, which, it'll, I think, and again, I'm going back to my healthcare background, but I think that it'll be next summer before we're back on track fully with meetings, personal meetings.
I will tell you a secret. I love teaching real people, but I also love teaching on Zoom.
Okay.
And there's actually, there's a lot of advantages to teaching on Zoom. But I wonder how it works in the music industry. But we'll have a separate talk about that offline. The other question is, my statistics teach me that less than 1% of startups succeed. VCs, most VCs will look at hundreds of applications in a year, choose 3 or 4, and then over a 7 or 10 year period, if they have 10 or 20% success, they're very lucky. So my reckoning is that less than 1 in 100 startups succeed. Why are we so busy teaching people to fail?
Because you're not necessarily teaching them to go off and do their own startup. I think that's a small part of what you're teaching them. In the case of musicians, you're giving them a toolbox for life. You're teaching them about the business world. You're teaching them about intellectual property. You're teaching them about budgeting. You're teaching them about products. You're teaching them about so many other things that are related, that are essential if you're going to start a company, but are also important for running your own career, and especially for musicians, because they tend to work for themselves. They tend to run their own careers. So I think that for them, I look at this as much more than just teaching you how to start a company. But there's a lot that can be taught, the whole thought process, the whole way you go about it, taking risks, failing. I mean, you know all about this. You're an entrepreneur yourself. I've taken risks. I failed.
No, but there's a reason that I teach entrepreneurship, which is I teach students to fail.
I agree.
Because I think failure is underrated. But essentially, so what you're saying is you're teaching these students about entrepreneurship. This is really interesting. And I think that it's actually germane to our discussion, because there's a difference between teaching students about entrepreneurship, which is really, really important, and the premise that we have, which might be a false premise, that we can turn regular students into entrepreneurs.
I don't think that you can turn people into entrepreneurs if they're not so inclined.
Exactly.
That I don't think you can do. But what you can do is you can give people a toolbox. And you can give them a toolbox whether they study business or accounting or rocket science or law or music. And in the case of musicians, because they are less likely than others to go and work for someone else, just, if they want to be in the music world, then it's even more important to give them the opportunity to fail in a controlled environment, because that is a big part of what we do, to give them the opportunity to take a risk, to let them think unhindered of wonderful new ideas, and basically to just, I like the way you put it, to teach them about entrepreneurship, to give them the toolbox of entrepreneurship without necessarily telling them, now you go off and do a company, because they won't all do that. But
yeah, most of them won't.
But that's fine.
But what you're saying, maybe, is that this is a toolbox that all the students should have these days.
I believe it is. I believe it is, and that's why.
Not just music, everybody.
I agree. I think, and that's why we're seeing so many entrepreneurship programs at all of the leading universities and colleges in Israel. Now, it's tempting to say, oh, rubbish, they're not all going to be entrepreneurs. Why are you teaching them entrepreneurship? But you know what? It's a bit like 20 years ago, people used to take business courses. And what used to once be a degree that you could also only do as a graduate degree after you'd worked for a few years, and you'd go and get an MBA, then became a bachelor's of business when you had zero experience. But really what it was a toolbox. And in the same way, in today's world, where we all have to be a lot more flexible, where we've moved from lifelong employment to lifelong learning, and from a very solid employment future to the gig economy, we all need to know.
Especially if you're a musician.
Now, all of this is true, and doubly so if you're a musician. If you're a musician, if you're an artist, then you really, really have to be able to operate in all these different fields. And again, yesterday we had an open day at Rimon on Zoom. You can't get 100 people in a room, but you can get them on a computer screen. So, and one of the things the academic director said, and I like the way she said it, she said, listen, you won't all get to the stage in Caesarea, which is, for the global audience, the big amphitheater where the biggest stars perform, sort of like...
It's Israel's...
it's Israel's O2 Arena. But it is.
But it's 2,000 years old.
It is. It's a beautiful location. But the point was, she said, you won't all get there. But until you get there, we'd like to give you some extra tools so that you can do some other things on the way, okay? And that's the way I look at it. If they take 3 years of programming within this program, they won't be programmers in the same way as someone who did a bachelor's degree in computer science, but they will have enough of a background to go off and obtain the additional tools, or maybe start off in some related position in a music tech company. And by the way, the music tech industry is growing, and it's growing very fast recently. We've got a number of very successful companies already. So that's a new development.
I'm happy to hear that.
No, but
it's like telling me that the airline companies are doing well.
Yeah, well, one of my brothers is an El Al captain, so I think we'll leave airlines off the conversation.
No, but I mean, there haven't been any accidents in months. Everything is relative.
That's true.
So I have 2 more questions. This has been wonderful. I hope we'll take it offline because we have lots of stuff to discuss now, which is part of the fun of these You've Got Mel things. So Nava, 2 things. The first thing is people like you who have drive and who are polymaths and are interested in so many different fields and successful in so many things are usually trying to show something to somebody. I call it the Nana Banana factor. You know, Nana Banana, you didn't think I could do it, and I did it, and now I'm this, and I am that. So who is your Nana Banana factor? Who prodded you on to greatness?
Wow. I don't really know, but
was there anybody in your family that didn't believe in you, or that?
I can't say that. I was lucky in that way, and I did have a lot of support. But one of the things was, and I think this is something that's sort of prodded me along over the years. Growing up in Israel, in an English-speaking family, first generation Israeli, then, not now. Now it's cool. I speak English to my kids, and their friends think it's very cool. When my parents spoke English to me, not cool. And Israel was very much about all being the same, and everyone I grew up with, their parents were all born here, their grandparents, had this wonderful military background one way or another. So I think that was part of it. It was part of this, sort of the immigrant experience. And the other thing was I was very young, and that was another part of it, was sort of fitting in, showing everyone I was okay. I actually remember this, the end of my first year in high school, and I'm 14, yeah. And there's this kid in my class who, was not maybe the top student, and he turned to me and he said, you're actually okay. And that to me was, that was a whole lot more important than getting A's. So maybe that's part of it.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing about you that people should know is that you're one of the most resilient people that I know. Your ability, we won't go into this, but like in your personal life and the challenges that you've managed to overcome, you're really quite incredible.
Well, thank you.
I'm saying that. I'm saying that.
Thank you. I mean, it's no secret that I've had cancer, which was not fun, but I'm okay. I also recently had another cancer scare, which was even less fun, because, the first time you don't really know what's happening. The second time, I'm not going there again. And yeah, I've had my challenges, but I think that you grow. I really do. It's not fun while you're going through whatever it is you're going through. But I think that, if you're prepared to just let yourself be in that situation for a little bit, then you really can grow. and I think I did grow. One of the things that I learned, and I was not very good at all, was to accept help. Not something that someone like me who's, runs around the world and I can do anything. When you can't open the door, or really very basic tasks, and you are reliant on people, and someone has to come in and help you with the very, very basics. It's a humbling experience, but it's also one that you grow from. So I think resilience is acquired.
Acquired?
Yeah, I think part of it is acquired. And part of it is acquired by going through these experiences. Part of it I think you have. Don't know, you're born with it, you grow up with it. But part of it you acquire.
Okay, so I think that most of it you were born with it. And finally, I always ask my wonderful interviewees whether they like the Beatles.
I love the Beatles. And what's more, my children love the Beatles.
Okay.
I take that as a great achievement.
And you should. So what is your favorite Beatles song?
Oh, I think I'm feeling optimistic today, so maybe Here Comes the Sun.
You're the second person to choose that song. But here's the other part. Now I'm going to ask you to sing a little bit.
Oh, really? I think maybe not today. I love singing, but as you can hear, I'm a little hoarse. So
when the Beatles auditioned in January 1st, 1962, they were hoarse, and they didn't get that contract at Decca. So you might not get your contract with the recording studio, but still everybody wants to hear you sing a few bars.
Sing with me.
I will.
Okay, and you're not going to play? Where's the saxophone?
No, because it won't be synchronous. So you start and I'll join you.
Okay. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. And I say it's all right. Little darling.
No, keep on going. It was
No,
beautiful.
I think that's enough. I promise to come back when I get my voice back.
It's been a long, cold, lonely winter. I think that's a George Harrison song.
I think it is.
How incredible of you.
I think it is.
And the last thing that I want to say after this wonderful chance to catch up with you and interview you is that I think what I've learned from you today is that entrepreneurship is, we have to become essentially the entrepreneurs of ourselves. This is what everything is teaching us, right?
That's true.
And what we have to teach the kids is how to become entrepreneurs of themselves.
I think that as we look forward, we look ahead at what's coming, especially now, but even without the current pandemic, our children will have a very different life to the one that we have, and ours is very different from our parents. And you have to be able to multitask. You have to be able to manage your own life, your own career, your own work life, your own balance, which has become today something that the younger generation focuses on in a greater way than we did. So yes, I think that you are the CEO of your own life, and you're the entrepreneur of your own startup, and we all are.
There's a book here. but you see, I would even argue that it's different, because sure, things have changed since I was a kid, and there was a milkman and an egg man and an elevator man, and of course the world has changed. But in the old days, you went to law school and then you were a lawyer for 40 years. Mm-hmm. You studied chemistry and then you were a chemist, unless you blew yourself up. Now nothing is safe. You study law and then nobody needs lawyers. So I think that what you're doing at Rimon is really something that everybody should be doing, in every field across the board is helping our students become, what do you call it? The CEOs of themselves.
The CEOs of their own lives. Look, it's true, and I think it is particularly true when it comes to artists. I mean, you know this from Shinkan. And it's the same type of thing. These are people who will typically have to manage their own careers. They will typically maybe be employed for periods of time, but on the whole have to manage their own professional life, manage their own brand. It's a big, we haven't talked about that, but managing your own brand, we all have to do that. But my brand as a business person is one thing. Your brand as a musician or as a fashion designer is quite another. And I think that we all, and in that respect, you and I, and we're doing similar things. What we're really doing is we're bringing the teachings of the business world into the world of the arts. And because I love multitasking, and I also love different worlds colliding and merging, this speaks to me. It's not just that I will go to the office and do my business thing and then go to a concert in the evening, but that I can actually somehow merge these two together. Yes. I love that.
What I call thinking between the boxes.
I like that. I like that.
So Nava, you and I have to start a university together, but we'll talk about that later. It's been wonderful having you, and you just let me know when we can jump on a Zoom and continue this wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much, Mel. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you, Nava.
Look forward to continuing.
And best and greatest of health to all of you guys.
And to you. Bye.
Bye.